new basketballs with insane high-tech features will change everything we know about the game we love. But that's not the only change that can make basketball completely different in the year 2050, so let's break it down. Technology is changing the world, and basketball is no exception, so let's look at some of the upgrades on the way. Wilson just came out with a new airless basketball that looks like the future, and it comes in 3 different colors: white, black, and brown. But you may be asking a couple questions, and that's completely fair. How is this similar to a regular basketball? Is it the same weight? How did they even come to make it? Well, here's the answers. This ball is a 3D printed masterpiece that is supposed to mimic a normal basketball in every way. And after watching some reviews on YouTube about it, the ball seems to hold its own against the traditional leather one. People are saying this ball plays like a regular one, and the bounce is nearly identical, so that's a complete W. Obviously, there's going to be a different feel, and as you can see, the looks are very different. But when this ball hits the open market, I wouldn't be surprised to see it some pickup runs and maybe in some professional leagues. I mean, we've already seen it in the dunk contest with KJ Martin yamming it during All-Star Weekend. Right now, it costs $2,500, and I know that's a lot. But if you keep the ball in good condition and use it strictly indoors, I don't see it wearing down as fast as the competition. Plus, you could definitely work on your handles in the house without getting screamed at that you're making too much noise. That happened to me a lot back in the day. But what if I told you that there was a ball that could connect to your phone, track your stats, and give you pointers on how to shoot better? Right now, there's a company called SIQ that makes this type of basketball, and no, this video is not sponsored. It could create maps of how well you shoot in certain spots on the court, and it gives real-time analytics to improve your shooting. I used SIQ as an example, but I'd imagine that there are other companies that are already making balls like this that will go above and beyond what we can even imagine. Now, I don't think this ball would be used in an NBA game or even for pickup, but imagine the things that some basketball trainers could accomplish with something like this. I mean, if this came out when Shaq was playing, he might have been the best player ever, and we all know he could have used it. Anyways, I think the sky is the limit for these new innovative basketballs. Now let's take a look at the future of NBA jerseys. I know we all have our favorite jerseys from certain NBA teams like the Orlando Magic pinstripes and the Miami Vice, but there's another jersey that can change the name and number with the touch of a button. Adam Silver revealed these smart jerseys years ago, and again, I don't think they'd be used in a traditional NBA game, but if these were to be worn during the NBA All-Star Game or just sold to fans separately, I think they'd be a big hit. Imagine you could go from a LeBron James Lakers jersey to a Stephen Curry Warriors one. You might get called a bandwagon, but hey, you'd look good doing it. I know we just talked about a new way to train with that advanced basketball, but imagine having a robot to defend you, and no, I don't mean Kawhi Leonard. I know you've all seen the video of this basketball robot not missing a shot and being programmed to shoot from anywhere. And if this doesn't scream future to you, I don't know what will. The creators also just upgraded it so that it can dribble, and even though it looks a little shaky right now, you have to realize that this is just the start. They're already developing machines to act as defenders so that players in training could train by themselves without the help of anyone else. When they said AI was taking over the world, I didn't know they meant basketball too. By the year 2050, I don't even want to think about what there might be. Will there be an entirely new robot league? Probably not, but maybe there'd be robot water boys, and let me tell you, the next generation of NBA players will be insane with the help of this new technology. If you watched the All-Star Weekend this year, then you've definitely seen the new LED courts that the NBA is currently testing out. During the different events, there was a bunch of animations that would follow players around, like Jaime Jaquez Jr. with a trail of fire behind him, and when Jaylen Brown did a tribute dunk to Dominique Wilkins. Saying this was cool is an understatement, because I think it made a crappy All-Star Weekend pretty enjoyable. This was also used at the 2023 FIBA Under-19 Women's Basketball World Cup in a competitive setting. And while I thought it might get a little busy during a competitive event like that, it actually wasn't bad at all. Which makes me think that by the year 2050, we could see this being used in the NBA, and things like the three-point line would just be digitally put there. This could also save teams money, because instead of having to redo the court if a college team went there to play in an NBA arena, all they would have to do is change the settings and voila, everything would be put in place. Advertisements would become a lot easier to place and implement during games, which also adds another check to the league's pocket. I'm kinda sold on this being used by 2050. But with NBA teams constantly switching areas and arenas, we also have to talk about all the new stadiums we're gonna see in the next couple of years. This includes a huge Sphere Arena in one of the most popular places in the world, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The Clippers have a new home in the works, and we'll actually get to see it completed this year in August. The Intuit Dome is set to be huge, and will finally separate the Lakers and Clippers from having to share the same arena. It's also gonna have some of the best amenities an NBA arena could offer, like multiple VIP seating levels, a plaza with bars, restaurants, and a huge team store, an entirely different court that's an exact replica of the game court for events and fans, and the most important of all, toilets. Clippers owner Steve Ballmer prides himself on how many toilets the arena will have, and it's projected to be over 1,100, which is actually 3 times the NBA average. So the only line you'll be waiting in is for overpriced food. But this isn't the only new NBA arena, because the 76ers have one in the works that will debut in 2031. And it's at the center of Philadelphia and Market East, home to a bunch of different malls, historical sites, and places to visit. If you're from Philly, you know this iconic area. Wells Fargo is classic, don't get me wrong, but you have to admit this place will definitely be better in the long run. And finally, we have to talk about the new Sphere Arena that was just released in Las Vegas. While it's used for all sorts of entertainment, basketball is one of the main attractions to this one-of-a-kind arena. They already hosted the Summer League there, and overall it was a huge success because of its uniqueness. By the year 2050, I expect everything to be happening in Vegas anyways, and I actually think that they'll have their own NBA team. And that brings me to my next point, which is the new NBA teams that are on their way. There's been rumors of expansion for years, and the last time we saw this was in 2003 with the Charlotte Bobcats, so what's the chances we see one in the future? I'd say pretty high because there are a couple cities dying to have a team, and let's start with Vegas. We just talked about how the Sphere is a great place to play basketball, but there are other arenas in Vegas that could house an NBA team, and one would be the T-Mobile Arena. This would make sense because in the past couple of years, we've seen professional teams move to Vegas like the Raiders, and we've seen teams establish themselves in Vegas like the Golden Knights. Listen to what LeBron had to say about Vegas and possibly having an NBA team in the city.
I would love to bring a team here at some point. That would be amazing. I want the team here, Adam. Thank you.
If anyone could get it done, it's Bron, so we're in good hands. Another city that would be next in line to get their own NBA team would be Seattle. As you all know, the Oklahoma City Thunder were previously known as the Seattle Supersonics, and the city is huge on basketball. The only reason they moved was because of a dispute involving a new arena, and the mayor of Seattle has already made it known that the city wants a permanent NBA team. So if expansion was to open back up and they added 2 new NBA teams, my bet is that Vegas and Seattle are the first to get the call. But what other cities are in the mix for a new NBA franchise? Well, according to Mark Spears, Mexico City would also be a candidate, and they've already played a number of games here, so it makes complete sense. I've also heard from Pittsburgh fans that they'd love an NBA team, and I think this would be so cool. Adding an in-state rivalry like the Penguins and Flyers to basketball would only spice up the league. What city do you guys think deserves an NBA team? People are always trying to find new ways to improve basketball, and of course this comes with rule changes and adding things to the game that could make it better. We've seen the NBA do this a lot in the past couple of years by adding a rule where players can actually get a technical foul for flopping, or where they can miss out on awards and all NBA teams for not playing enough games during the season. So what rules or ideas could they add in the next couple of years that could absolutely change everything in basketball? Well, we first have to look at how much they play, because right now it's clear that there are way too many games in an NBA season. There's 82 games in a regular NBA season right now, but don't be surprised if they decide to lower it by 10 games or even more. This would definitely happen sooner rather than later, because even Adam Silver has had press conferences about the possibility of a shorter NBA season.
I'm not against potentially changing the format of the season, even possibly shortening it a bit, if we can demonstrate that that's going to have a direct impact on injuries.
Now, he said this would happen if it meant less injuries for NBA players, and it doesn't take a doctor to know that if back-to-backs are eliminated and players have more rest between games, less injuries would occur. So I'd say that this is likely to happen, but there are still people who think that the players are being a little soft and that the season should not be shortened. Some of the opposing arguments are that the NBA has been going on for years and they've always had regular 82-game seasons. This is a lot of old head talk, but still, that's a valid point. And others say that with all the technology and new discoveries in health science, players could definitely prepare for games even if it ends up being a back-to-back. So what do you guys think? Should Adam Silver in the NBA shorten the season or keep it where it is right now? Let's move on to a new change that's actually been implemented in other leagues and has a pretty good response from the audience, and that's a 4-point line. Now, there are some people who are for it and some people who are against it, so let's talk about the pros from the basketball side of things. At the end of the day, the NBA is a business, and we all know that scoring and crazy offensive moves are what brings in viewers. Not the Patrick Beverleys and the Jared Vanderbilts of the world, sorry guys. Adding a 4-point line would make the game a lot more interesting for the casual viewer, and people would definitely tune in to see players like Stephen Curry, Dame, Caitlin Clark, and Sabrina Ionescu shooting from the parking lot. A league by the name of Big Three, which features guys like Gerald Green, Nick Young, and even Dr. J as a coach, has a 4-point line, and it's electric whenever they decide to chuck it from deep. So if you're looking from an outsider's perspective, why would this be a terrible idea for the NBA or WNBA to add? Well, there's a couple reasons. Scoring would get out of hand. You'd see box scores like the one from this year's All-Star game, and overall, the game would get a lot less competitive. And the level of basketball would go down with it because you'd see all these players try and master this shot, which would add way more air balls and bricks off the backboard. Adam Silver actually gave us an answer a couple years back, and anyone who wants a 4-point shot won't be happy with this response.
Will we ever see a 4-point shot in the NBA?
I think highly unlikely. I think there's a rock and jock MTV aspect of that.
Even though he said the likelihood of this happening is unlikely, the fact that the big sports networks like ESPN are bringing it up means that there's a shot that it happens. Just probably not a 4-point one. Really quickly, I want to bring up the in-season tournament and talk about how the NBA may add even more of these in the future. Since the first one was so successful and we saw LeBron James and the Lakers hype it up like it was the championship, there's a chance that it gets permanently added with new rewards. Some people have even brought up that if a team wins the in-season tournament, they should should get an automatic playoff spot. And while I think this is going a little far, who knows what could happen. At the end of the day, I don't think anybody should put up a banner for winning this though.